What's good? What's good, everybody? This your boy D Money. We on another day in the life of a designer, just leaving work. What we gonna be talking about today is primarily if I had to start over today, what would I do? Pretty much, how would I, you know, reform my whole process of doing things and how would I do it better? You feel me? Like, I'm gonna just start off with this, core question. If you're day one, you know what I'm saying, you understand that we always have a beginning question to our conversation, you know what I'm saying? And make sure that you guys like and subscribe, to the channel as well too. Make sure you share with your friends and family so that way they can see what we got going on here at Dreams of Ruler Street Fashion. I really appreciate everybody that's been hopping on, our YouTube lives, because it's definitely been helping us to continue to grow. We're now at 931 as far as subscribers right now. This month we just started, we were just at 903, so definitely making progress. So I definitely appreciate everybody that, has been tapping in, showing love, and, what I'm saying, continuing to watch the streams as well too in our other content. If I had to start over today, if everything disappeared today, my brand, my inventory, my following, my resources, but I kept my knowledge, how would I build a fashion house from zero? Honestly, losing everything doesn't mean starting from nothing. You feel me? Because even right now, I've had to, ultimately change my algorithm on all the platforms that I was using before, because just like I said on my Instagram live stream, we were literally working with Next Star Media Group, which is a marketing team or marketing agency, I should say, that actually markets for companies like ABC, CBS, CW, NBC, etc. Help them, to, amplify their audience and, grow their audience 3x. So with that experience, it ultimately showed me that, you pretty much got to do things by yourself if you're independent, or unless you're more of a generic brand. You feel me? Like if you're not doing something that isn't unique, it's better to partner with a company like that. You feel me? But honestly, for me, I learned that, everything that I've been doing is primarily right. There is some mistakes within, some of the things that I set up as far as like with my Google, my, website, Google Ads, Google Shop, just everything primarily with Google outside of, my search engine optimization presence as far as on Google. Like my ranking on there is in the top 10 for, what I'm trying to do. Because literally when you pull up my name, you find my website and everything. So that's not really the problem. It's about finding the products. So, we're working that out right now. Of course, you can go to the website and buy any products with no problem, but, there's always something that you can, work on and develop as well too. So that's ultimately, where we coming from with that. But, losing everything doesn't mean you're starting over. You know what I'm saying? If I lost everything today, what would I actually lose? And what couldn't be taken away? Experience is your ultimate asset. Taste is an asset as well too. Relationships and connections that you have with different people become an asset over time, depending on, how solid the relationship is and how solid, the people are as well too. Your eye for design is ultimately your greatest asset, because that, as a designer, that helps you to be able to walk in just about any room. as far as, with the type of designs you're able to put together, you feel me? So the main thing is that, the material things can disappear, but, your knowledge compounds over time. Your greatest competitive advantage isn't your clothing, it's how you think and how you move. You feel me? I build, the philosophy first, similar to, how I did before with visualize your purpose and, live like royalty. I mean, maybe, I might do it in another form of fashion, if I wanted to do something else outside of what I've already, done. But, most people start with products. You feel me? What the question I would, questions I would start out with is, what do I want this fashion house to represent? Who am I designing for? What problem am I solving? What should people feel when they wear my work? And why should this brand exist? Without those answers, you feel me, every collection becomes random. You feel me? Products change. A philosophy should outline every collection. A philosophy pretty much is your mission of the vision. You feel me? It's the morals, it's the principles, it's the values that the brand carries over time. And the more that you reinforce this in every collection, in every product release, the more that the brand strengthens. And then on top of that, the more that your community strengthens as well too, because now they understand, and not only what the philosophy is, but possibly how it, can help them in another situation, because you reinforced it multiple ways. Feel me? I build an audience before I drop my collection. And that was, one of my main problems when I first started out, and even, within a couple years in, not actually trying to build an audience, but just having a framework and mindset to, just put work out. And, most brands and creators, they actually do, build an audience before they actually put out their first collection, But making is spending, years creating products before building relationships. That's one mistake many designers make, But mainly before anything, I take the time like I did before to do the research, documenting everything as far as sketches, inspiration, failures, walks like this, conversations, studio sessions. People invest in journeys long before they invest in products. So I definitely would have been doing things like this, showing you more of behind the scenes of building up to my first collection than just, releasing the collection. You feel me? The whole thing is, are you building just customers, or are you building a community? I created, fewer, better products. That would have been my goal as well too. I know when I first came out, my first collection had about 40 to 50 pieces for men and women and kids all together, including accessories as well too. So I definitely would have trimmed that down to probably like 15 products, just so that way people would still have options, but at the same time, they still have, a nice little variety as well too to choose from. Instead of launching a large collection, a large, maybe, one unforgettable product at a time. That's, best for most designers, just so that way they can, build up their design style and also, be able to express, the quality, the, philosophies of the brand, and, the overall vision of what, you're trying to put out there. Obsessing over, the fit, materials, construction, story, presentation and packaging. One exceptional piece teaches more than 10 average ones. You feel me? Your first product should establish your standard. I build systems, not just collections. You feel me? Fashion houses aren't built, collection by collection. They're built through systems. Creative process, design archive, content schedule, product development workflow, customer communication, documentation, systems ultimately create consistency. So if you aren't building, solid systems for your brand, and what systems are is daily routines, work routines that, you and your employees will typically do in order to make sure that things for the brand get done. You feel me? It's almost like an assembly line of actions that happen on a day-to-day basis to make sure that all work, all production, all marketing, all promotion, and etc. get done. However, the plan is each and every day, that's one thing. But ultimately, the goal is, creating consistency within your actions so that way it shows to your community and ultimately compounds into trust. You feel me? What I would never do again is, like I said, I won't release another collection until I actually build up a solid audience. You feel me? Then on top of that, with the collections that I make now, I'll make sure that they're all solid products. You feel me? And, I won't try to put out like 30, 40 pieces. I'll try to put out like, 15, maybe 25 at best. But, try to shrink down the pieces, make sure they're all quality, top-notch, high-quality pieces. And, everything is aligned with the philosophy of the brand. Because ultimately, for Dreams of Rulers, how we, release our collections is with a poetry, spoken word album, and on top of that, the poetry book. So we don't just put out the apparel, we put out a whole vibe, you feel me? And that's ultimately what, I'm trying to consistently do. Mistakes that slowed your growth, that would be similar to like, just life, honestly. Nothing really slowed my growth except, life being life. Me being homeless, I probably would have saved my money up first before I started the brand. That would probably been my ultimate mistake, you feel me? I probably would have, just focusing on working with myself until I actually built up solid relationships with, different models, different, brands, to where like I can see that they're solid, that they put in the work, the time, effort, you feel what I'm saying, with what they're doing. And ultimately, like I said, I was just trusting myself a whole lot more with everything I was doing. Ultimately, what we all underestimate is ourselves in the process of, building our fashion houses, building, our businesses, building our brands. You feel me? We don't allow ourselves to really believe in our true superpowers. And it's typically because, a lot of us are starting off early, between the ages of like 18 to 25. And, that's our chaos type years, you feel me? Where, we don't really know too much of life. We got some experience with life, but not too much. Feel me? Not enough to where, you can go outside and totally feel comfortable about yourself and every decision that you're making, and know that it's coming from a place of wisdom instead of emotion. You feel me? I probably would have even started my brand a little bit later instead of as early as I did. Because I started my brand when I was about 24, 25. And I had no money really saved up. I lucked up because, I I ended up not having my people steal all my money. Ended up giving me about 20 grand of my inheritance that, was left over from my mom. But, I should have had way more. Shit, I would have been fucking famous by now if I'd have had all the money I was supposed to have. But, that's neither here or there. But other than that, I really, did everything from the muscle. Built everything from the ground up. Still kind of building everything up right now. And, we just on the journey. But, the good thing is that I always adopted good habits, good work ethic habits as far as staying consistent every day, showing up every day, you know what I'm saying? Being strategic in the way I put shit out for myself, you know what I'm saying? And that's something that, as young designers, you got to be able to, distinguish strategic ways of putting out your work so that way, it attracts the proper audience and, your community feels even more engaged with it. I guess you could say, you feel me? Starting over isn't, about forgetting the past. It's about, applying everything the past taught you. Success, isn't built because you never failed. It's built because you stop wasting your failures. You feel me? If you had to start your career over tomorrow, what would you do differently? And like I said, I would have just saved up my money, continue to do the research, continue to really plan out, my first collection, make sure everything was in tip-top shape, make sure all the fabrics and materials and samples were on point. So that way, once I got ready to launch, then I'd be cool. But before even that as well too, along with, doing the research, I would have started building up my audience by showing y'all the behind the scenes of everything that I was doing. Like, sketching. Like I said in the beginning, what I'm saying? The, walk and reflects, giving you insight of me as a designer. Things that I've learned, in the game, you feel me? Doing the podcast thing, doing, other stuff in order to boost the brand's equity, in order to, build that community, that trust with y'all. But, we here now. And ultimately, what's one lesson you wish you would have learned 5 years earlier? And honestly, I would have wished, I wouldn't have learned, but I just would have had the opportunity, And maybe I did really have the opportunity, but just didn't think of it that way. But wish I would have just tapped into the live stream a little bit earlier. So that way, today, this moment, I'd have already been well ahead and just been, focusing on making clothes, making solid content for the brand, and just continuing to scale the brand instead of, trying to get us in the forefront of things. You feel me? Starting over isn't the same as from scratch. Scratch means you have nothing. Starting over means you have experience, perspective, and judgment. Those are the things that build lasting brands. If everything disappeared tomorrow, I still know how to think. I know how to observe. I know how to create, you feel me, and how to lead. That's the real foundation of a fashion house. Not the clothes, but the mindset, you feel me, behind them. You got to have more of a retrospective rather than a theoretical thought process when it comes to creating and also being an entrepreneur as well too. Because a lot of us want to be entrepreneurs, but a lot of us don't put in the work. That's number one. Then a lot of people don't even do the proper research as well too. And, that's something that helps you stay grounded in your personal journey rather than, taking abstract advice that, might sound good, but doesn't really apply to your situation, how you're building, and ultimately what you're trying to do. You know, you got to look at, the experiences that you have gained, the lessons that you have gained, the knowledge that you have gained, and, take those in, and that becomes, your real foundation from the beginning. And then once you go, and start implementing the sketches, implementing, the, creative process, the content schedule, your product development workflow, the documentations of different things that, are considered as licensing and things of that sort, then, you're starting to build systems. And like we said before, not just collections. So just keep those things in mind, you know what I'm saying? And, just keep trying to evolve your brand. Like I always say at the end of these joints, keep visualizing your purpose. You feel me? All it takes is a solid plan, proper research, and, execution, and your dreams and goals come to fruition. Believe me. It's just like, here on YouTube. I just started posting 3.5 years ago, like 2023, 2, started posting on this joint. And I had been wanting to do that joint years before that, but I had finally got the opportunity, proper living situation, everything, even got, the podcast mic and all that shit. Did that. And I was able to grow, 900 plus followers in 3.5 years, bro. And that's just because I had the focus, the drive, and I continue to do the research, in order to develop a solid plan and execute that motherfucker. So that's all I'm practically saying to you guys, is just develop a solid plan, so that way you can achieve your goals. That's all it really takes. And that's consistency and focus and discipline get you to where you need to be. You got to put blinders on your eyes and say, fuck the haters. You feel me? Because ultimately that's what it is. And if you keep that in mind and keep that focus, you'll achieve. So make sure y'all check out our From the Mud collection. Make sure you check out, our spoken word album, which is on all streaming platforms. And make sure you also check out our poetry book, From the Mud, which is on, all book platforms and at your local library as well, too. All it talks about is taking pain, pressure, and struggles and evolving it into success. So keep visualizing your purpose, and I'm out.